Somebody's buying.
So we are finally on the next little tiny section of the creed, creator of heaven and earth. Okay, which hopefully will move, not that it's not important, but we'll move maybe a little quicker. I don't know. We'll see. As I said before, all three persons of the Holy Trinity are cooperating in the work of creation. Okay, creation is not a necessity by any means. Not to keep using, Islam as a sort of a foil of sorts, but creation is actually a necessity because if God, like I said, is master, you got to have somebody to be master of. So, the truth is, creation is a total free gift. It's not accidental. It's not random. It's not chaotic. It's God has a plan. Okay, and it is actually. And I don't know how much we went into. I'm not sure how much. I'm not going to get into it. But if you look at just the precision of so many aspects of the universe, okay, and particularly for our solar system, for us to have life, you can't say, "Wow, it's kind of random." It doesn't scientifically doesn't hold water in the slightest bit. So, the world is ultimately created for the glory of God. And it's not the glory. Let me read this. So the creation of the world does not increase God's glory. It's not like, oh, look what I made, and they're like, wow, you are really talented. No, it doesn't increase God's glory at all. It rather communicates His glory to His creation, in particular to us. Okay. So, how did God create? He creates out of nothing, the ex nihilo. Okay, only God can truly create. Okay? We can manufacture, okay, but we have to take pre-existing realities and reformat them, etc., etc. God creates out of nothing, okay, by His almighty power. He creates the world, and this is once again interesting from a scientific standpoint. He creates the world, in an ordered fashion. So there actually is order. So this is one of the reasons why, once again, I'm not trying to, this is not the beat up, Islam night or something like that. There's a reason why Islam does not, in all those areas that Islam really sort of resides in, that, after its, expansion in the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, you don't really see a science really developing, okay? Because, once again, God is, in a sense, He's capricious. If something is this today, it might be something else tomorrow. There's really, what we would say colloquially, there's no rhyme or reason. Whereas in the West, no, God is logical. So His creation is ordered. And say, for example, a lot of times people will really say, well, the greatest threat to free thinking, and when I say free thinking, I mean just really being able to think and what was searching for the truth. The greatest threat is faith. And specifically, it's the Christian faith, and even most specifically, it's the Catholic Church. And they would blame the Catholic Church for the quote-unquote Dark Ages, okay? And that, basically, free thinking, the ability to search for the truth got pretty much clamped down for, 700, 800, 900, however many years. And finally, Europe broke the shackles, of the church, etc., etc., and, blah, blah, blah. Nothing could be further from the truth, That is a complete myth that is, when you look at the evidence, is sad and laughable. For example, St. Albert the Great, his feast day was just a couple of days ago on Friday, and he is the patron saint of all those who study the natural sciences. And he was a brilliant man. He obviously is a holy man as well, but he was a brilliant man, just from that standpoint. He studied physics and chemistry and botany and astronomy, which is not astrology, astronomy and animal sort of physiology, kind of the flora and fauna, a master of so many things. And very interestingly enough, I haven't verified this beyond just one source, but it seems like it's a credible source. He actually, with a pretty extensive mathematical, astronomical kind of set of proofs, showed forth, and this is, mid 13th century. Okay, so this is like at least a good 200 years before, and because people were like, "Oh, Christopher, I wouldn't do that. You're going to sail off the edge of the earth, because it's flat, And so 200 years before that, here's this, German Dominican priest who's like, I am postulating that the earth is actually spherical in nature, But that being said, he really helped. Some would even argue, Francis Bacon, who was the Franciscan friar, the Spanish, I think, Franciscan friar, who helped, kind of form that whole notion of the scientific method that, you see particulars and you think, well, what could possibly be the explanation? St. Albert the Great actually might have been even more influential in many ways, because he was very much, prior to him, oftentimes science was, this is what was said before, and therefore they kind of almost like would just kind of take that for a fact and this and that. And he would be like, no, we have to observe things, okay? So, for example, he, I don't know if he, I guess he physically observed, I don't know exactly how but it had been thought from early on, back in the days of, I think, the Roman, what would you call it, philosopher, scientist, is it Pliny, that, eagles took the skin of a fox and wrapped their eggs in the skin of the fox and put it out in the sun, and then they hatched the eggs. That was like scientific, like, oh, that's how it happens. And St. Albert the Great is like, it's not how it happens at all, But he would observe the particulars and say, because God is ordered, because God is God, because he's perfect, because there's that logical, and all of creation is ordered. Therefore, all these particulars don't just lead to, oh, it's just a particular. We got to come up with an explanation for every particular kind of. No, actually, there are explanations that explain the particular things that we see, and so you can observe them and say, what can I conclude? Is there a more, like what would we say, what kind of hypothesis can I, postulate that would explain all of these particulars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So scientific, this is why science in a powerful way really, I don't want to say it finds its ultimate roots, because obviously there was science being done in Asia as well, but in the West, in Catholic Europe, that was really, in so many ways, at least a major cradle of the science. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Gone off my side note. So always about science. I was a biology major many, many years ago. So if you're like, why is he so like fixated on this stuff? I guess that's why. Okay, so is God still concerned about all his creation? Absolutely. This is like the anti-deist, God has to be, because if he's not, then everything ceases to exist. Creation cannot exist on itself. Things can't exist apart. Once again, it's a completely crazy, you got to turn half your brain off to think, oh yeah, God just wound the watch up and just let it go. That's basically saying, I don't want God involved in all of the particulars of my life. So, let's make it sound like God just created everything. Okay, we're good with that. Everybody's good with that. He doesn't really care about it anymore. He's out. He's left the building, No. So if for a single moment God did not think about all of creation, including ourselves, we just cease to exist. God is the source of all that is. Period. So absolutely, and he, not just like in a generic sort of like, Yep, all still okay. That's fine. He guides according to his plan. We call it his divine providence. Very, very mysterious. Once again, only one plan. It's the perfect plan. It's God's plan. He guides everything. To the ultimately to the perfection that He has intended it for. How our free will, that's very mysterious. Okay, so just to say at least so. And St. Peter says that we should cast all our anxieties, or cast all your, that's the exact quote, cast all your anxieties on Him, for He cares about you. Okay. Once again, kind of comes back to that, oh yeah, Trinitarian. He's relational in His very nature. Makes sense. It's not like, oh, well, that explains everything. There's nothing mysterious about it. Totally mysterious, but it makes sense. And it's a very consoling reality, as St. Peter tells us. Providence over creation is absolutely sovereign, and yet somehow he not only respects our free will, but he takes that and he allows us to cooperate in his work, and somehow that doesn't have to change his plan. How that works, only he understands. So we can freely choose for good or for evil. Obviously, for good is the cooperation in his plan. And it's not just like, I'm going to make them feel like they're important, but we're not really going to let them, it's like, here, kid, here, swing the spoon around. Yeah, you're really helping, there. And you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm making the cake, And God doesn't need us in the slightest way. He doesn't, actually, you could say cynically, we're more of a hindrance, than a help. Because, God could be like, okay, I can take care of all this by myself, But he wants, because of his love for us, and it allows us to cooperate with his grace. It's for his greater glory and honor and our salvation, our dignity, So, which is interesting. God in his perfection, it's not like just the people are like, I am now consciously I'm now cooperating with God's plan. Everything cooperates with God's plan somehow in some mysterious way, So it works better for us if we cooperate proactively. Okay, but anyway, very mysterious to say things. So, what did God create? Well, everything. And we say in the creed, the heavens and the earth. Okay, so in other words, both the invisible, the heavens, and the visible, the earth. Okay, so whatever is visible, whatever is invisible. Obviously, that invisible part, we're not always completely sure what that all contains. Obviously, the angels, but well, I shouldn't say obviously, but the angels. Us, we got a better sense of what it all, although, look, we don't like to say, oh yeah, we know the entire universe, got it all mapped out, got it all figured out. No, obviously not. Maybe someday it's possible, because the universe is not infinite. The universe is finite. So it is possible for us someday, maybe, if we're around long enough, and God gives us the ability to advance in technology, we could map up, we could know the entirety of visible creation. It is possible. It's probably not probable, but it's possible. We can't even figure out exactly the oceans, let alone the entire universe, but it is possible because it's finite. And we're not going to, in this world, we are not going to know, oh yeah, we know the invisible creation. We'll know bits and pieces as God has revealed it to us, but can't know that completely. So, greatest of all God's creation, as you know in Genesis, as each day progresses, it is good, he saw it was good, it is good, good. And then when he creates us, it's very good. Okay. So the greatest of his creation is twofold. It's the two, not nations, not, well, I don't know, I was going to say races, but that's not right either. It's the two realities. I don't know, but anyway, it's us and the angels. There. Can't figure out what a good category for that is. So the angels are created in the image and likeness of God. We are created in the image and likeness of God. Okay? which should give us an immediate indication like, oh, it's probably not that he looks like us or vice versa, right? Our bodies do share in that, but that image and likeness, which we'll get into, is primarily seen in the soul. Okay, but we'll get into that as well. So the angels, kind of trying to pick up a little, because eventually when I say, hey, Father Hess, do you want to come in and teach? And then he says, where are you? I'm like, well, I'm in the first part of the creed still. You know, he'll be like, what? So the angels. Angels, once again, very mysterious, but they're finite. So we can, although it's not going to be in this life, but we will be able to know the entirety of the angelic world. You know, but it's going to require God's grace, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're finite. They're creatures, just like us, in the sense that we're creatures. But angels are unlike us in the sense that they are pure spirit, okay, no body. So you got, the pure spirit, okay, the angels, and you got the pure physical, the animals, okay, and you got us. We're sort of like this very interesting middle. It's not really a middle ground, but it's this. We're angelic, but we're also animalistic. So we've got this interesting kind of mixture, if you will. So they have no body. They're invisible. We don't know exactly when they were created. It's before we were created, but we don't know. This is above our pay grade at this point. We don't know. We don't know how many. Okay. The Greeks. I think this is an accurate sort of parallel, maybe analogy of sorts. I like to use the example. The Greeks had a phrase when they were talking about like a lot. They would say myriads upon myriads. Okay. It's kind of like maybe sort of, when someone says, well, how many people were there? Oh, it's like a gazillion people were there. Well, there's no such thing as a gazillion. But a gazillion is our very colloquial way of saying there were a lot of people. Tons of people. Just like a gazillion, We don't know how many angels. It's a very mysterious reality that we've been given just little snapshots here and there, okay? We can imagine, though, that it is an immense number, okay? It's a finite number, but it is an immense number, okay? We don't know that much about the angels. It's been described, and probably with St. Thomas Aquinas, he said that each angel is in and of himself his own species. Okay. Now, I'm not sure how that translates to, because when we think of genus and species, and put it this way, they are so utterly, we're all the same species, we're all individuals. And I don't know if Thomas Aquinas exactly, because this is before, classification, genus, species, all kind of stuff. But I think it could be somewhat, we're all of the same species, but we're all utterly unique, totally unique in every way, shape, and form. The angels are their own species, if you will. They're even more unique than we are in that regards. We don't know, it seems, this has never been doctrinally taught by the church, and it probably never will because we don't really know this for certain, but it seems as if from Scripture, both New and Old Testament, there seems to be what we would call 9 choirs or types or levels of angels. So you've got angels, which is sort of seems to be the bottom rung of the ladder. You've got archangels, and I don't know the whole progression. The lowest are the angels, the highest are the seraphim. You get seraphim, cherubim, dominions or dominations, virtues, powers, thrones, angels, archangels. I'm missing somebody somewhere in there, but it seems, but that's not a definitive. But there's sort of a categorization of sorts. Don't know. The angels, like us, or maybe I should say, like the angels, we have the powers of intellect and will. That's, what makes us like unto God, okay? That image and likeness, that powers of intellect and will. So animals don't have that, A chimpanzee might be intelligent, but chimpanzee cannot, even actually a chimpanzee, this is going back into the little science thing, cannot pass the syntax test, okay? So we, a little kid, if we say, all right, Johnny, okay, dog bites man, okay. Man bites dog, and Johnny's going to be like, what? That's weird, So even Johnny understands, little toddler understands, different syntax, got it. Chimpanzee can. The most famous chimpanzee, Noam Chomsky, I think, after the famous philologist Noam Chomsky. Okay, he knows over 200 signs in the American Sign Language. Can't get it. Man bites dog, dog bites man. No, can't figure it out. So a chimp, you can communicate, but you can't really communicate, not on a human level. So animals have intelligence to a certain degree, but they don't have intellect. No animal can know God. No animal can know the good in that sense. Animals can choose, but they usually choose according to stimuli and stuff like that. We, like the angels, can actually choose to do the good, or conversely, to do the evil, to rebel against God. Their intellect and will is vastly superior to ours. Okay, angels are amazing creatures. Like, for example, like our guardian angels. Okay, we talk about them being here, and they are in reality, not just in sort of some, let's just pretend like they're there. But they've never left God. They have not left before the presence of God. They're in that. But all an angel has to do is think about, and they are present. Angel has to think. Like if we thought about it, I want to go to Kansas City. Well, we'd be there. Angels communicate, but they don't communicate as we communicate. They communicate through what we would maybe refer to as like a kind of a type of mental telepathy of sorts. It's our shabby way of kind of describing it. So intellect and will, vastly superior to us. Okay, so angels are, if we saw, well, in fact, St. John in the book of Revelation, he sees one angel. He's immediately on the ground in adoration because he assumes it's God. Angel corrects him. You think, okay, well, he learned, this is kind of what angels look like and everything. So towards the end of the book, another angel appears. What does he do? He's on the ground again. St. Thomas Aquinas says if just one angel would appear to us, we would assume that was God, because the glory of just one angel alone is so utterly, utterly remarkable, to say the least. So lots more that can be said about angels, but we'll kind of get into this a little bit more. We'll talk about like the guardian angels and things like that. So angels are at the service of God. Okay, his angels are at the service of God, because there's the fallen angels, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But his angels are at his service. We don't know what they all do. There's probably a lot that we can't even fully understand at this point. It's not just they're like, taking like dictation from God. Oh, okay, we got to get that message to or we're talking like mysterious. Like, could the angels be part of the celestial orbiting of things? We don't know. We're talking about something that is it just transcends any kind of science that we could ever possibly we don't know. There could be a lot of surprises. We'll be like, holy cow, So lots of things. Our guardian angels, okay, are with us always. Okay, like I said, they, as our Lord says, they behold. See. So To see that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always behold the face of my Father who is in heaven. So our guardian, it's just the power of the angel, of the angelic world. Okay, so everyone, don't. Our angels are actually, in particular, our guardian angel is actually superior to us. Even in the prayer we pray, angel God, my guardian angel, I rather this day be at my side to light and to guard and to rule and to guide. Okay, we're not like above, So there's a, now don't, and I cannot. I heard the explanation for this, and it was really good. I'm like, oh yeah, and now of course I'm like, I gotta write that down. I did, although I know where the source is, so I gotta look it back up again. Get it? Do not. The church has warned us: do not get into trying to decide. Oh well, the name of my angel is. Don't get into that. Just don't go down that path. Some of it I think has to do with the fact that our angel he's on a higher rank. Okay, if there was something else about it. There's also a bit of a danger.
Is that what you're trying to think about? What you're trying to recall?
Yeah.
I heard it explained that because we name things that we kind of show possession over.
Maybe that was
our
maybe
dog,
maybe
or even
that,
our
yep.
child. We have like
An authority over.
An authority
Yes.
over, and we have a claim to some extent over. So that was a little bit.
And that may have been, maybe that was the full explanation of the fact that they are in a rulership position, if you will. There's also the sense of we use names very casually. We even choose names relatively casually. We see, especially in the Old Testament. Oh, well, no, I shouldn't say. I mean, you look at someone like Peter. Starts off Simon. Or the word change. When God changes the name of a person, it's very significant. In demonic possessions, the exorcist seeks to find the name, tries to force the demon or demons to reveal their name. Because once you have the name, you have a certain control over the person. That might kind of relate back. But name, and I've heard this as well, I don't know how true this is, but you do not want to mess around with a world that you don't really know. Who are you speaking to? So if you're asking, well, reveal your names. You just don't want to mess around with that. We only have 3 angelic names that we are certain of. Okay, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. The 3 archangels that are named in Scripture. Beyond that, we do not know, and it's not necessary. So don't just say, I'm going to name my guardian angel Fred. It's awkward to keep calling him guardian angel. Well, just deal with it. So the demons, the flip side of the coin. So the demons, and we will talk at some length, because this is important, because this is one of the enemies that we're up against. Okay, the demons are fallen angels. We don't know what happened. I think there's good evidence from sort of philosophical, metaphysical, that we could kind of really say probably when it happened. We don't know. Somehow the angels are tested. Okay, their freedom must be not tested like, write your name down. Question number 1. It's not. It's just it has to be actualized. The potential to serve God or not serve God. Well, you have to decide. It's like Joshua saying to the people who he knows are unfaithful. He's like, you must decide. Will you serve God or serve the gods, the demons basically that your parents beyond the river served, in Egypt. The famous, I and my house will serve the Lord. I can't. I hope there's not a test at the. I'll have a hard enough time just answering for my life. hope there's not an additional yeah, man, I'm gonna fail that one. So we don't know exactly what happened. Okay, I got distracted with that. I'm like, where was I? Okay, well, don't know exactly what happened. We know their potential to either serve God or not serve God had to be actualized. I believe it's St. Thomas Aquinas who postulates, and I think it sounds pretty legit. It seems pretty reasonable to say. And we can't fathom this because we're little puny creatures. We're human creatures. Angelic creatures, way, way, way on a different realm than we are. St. Thomas speculates that it is, so the first decision that they make is either for or against God. There's all kinds of speculation of what was the test. Were they, classically, were they shown, the incarnation, and would they worship the God-man, or had something to do with Mary? You know what? People who say that this is what it is, we don't know, never will know in this life, and probably it might have something to do with that. It's likely, it's probable, but we just don't know. So, speculation, and that's all good and fine. But something they had to choose. And because they're angels with superior intellect and will, it is their first choice. Now, I don't think that's dogmatically taught by the church. I think it's a good speculation, though. But you can believe it or not believe it. But because of their nature, their first decision forms them. It either, I don't know if I would say preserves the goodness, accentuates the goodness. I'm not sure how you would say that exactly, or it disforms them. They're good.
Because of their nature, their first, you said, choice.
Because of their nature,
because they have full understanding.
Yeah,
right?
they can. Their mind, their intellect and will can penetrate things that we simply would be like, what? Wait, what? I can't read the instructions on this test. What is this? I don't even understand this. And they're able to make one decision that will concretize for all eternity. Now, we eventually will make one decision, but God gives us however short or long our life might be. So it's not radically different from us in the sense that ultimately the decision of our whatever state that we decide to leave this earth in, or we don't really decide to leave the earth, but whenever we decide for or against God, when God says, all right, we're calling you to the reckoning, point of reckoning, that's going to be our decision. That will hold firm for all eternity. So it's not like totally at opposite ends of the spectrum. They can make one decision, and it makes sense that it's their first decision, because then that absolutely forms them. It either preserves that goodness or it denigrates that goodness. We don't know. It obviously happened before Adam and Eve's creation, because we got the serpent, Satan, involved in that. We don't know exactly, is this before, are the angels created, is the invisible world created before the visible world? We don't really know. I think the speculation is that they probably are. I don't think the church dogmatically teaches one way or the other. And anyway, I was going to say it's not terribly important.
It doesn't say that in the Bible. That's just how we kind of thought of it.
Yeah, I think and I'm just going to say in a very broad stroke, a general consensus would be that they probably were created before the visible creation, but I don't think that's something we really have absolute, they were definitely created before we were created. But we know that is the reference point.
All we know is that they were created before Adam and Eve were tempted in the garden.
And they probably are created before the visible world, but and we know we don't know how many fell. I mean, it's a frightening reality that the angels who have ability to know. And now this was before, because sometimes people would say, yeah, but so were they already in heaven? Did they already behold the face of God? And these are speculative, but I think it'd be safe to say that we don't, put it this way, the ice just got real thin where I'm like, I don't want to speculate. I don't believe, see if I don't believe they beheld the face of God. I don't think, but I'm not absolutely.
The ones that fell, is that what you're saying? Or just
before the decision was made, I don't think they had been given the gift of the beatific vision. I don't think. Does that sound?
Yeah, we have no way of knowing.
Well, if
Okay.
it's
not
not
written,
written,
so.
saw it and then
Yeah, it's
decide
almost
after
inconceivable that any
Yeah.
being who did behold that could decide that they were somehow greater.
and then
So,
choose. Yeah.
It's logical to assume
Yeah.
that they did not receive that full vision.
There's a lot of speculation, and even like I said, St. Thomas's speculation that it was the first decision. It makes sense, but we're in somewhat speculative waters in that sense. We know some of them chose. How many? Once again, some speculation, although we might have a bit of a clue. There is that reference in St. John's Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, that talks about the tail of the dragon, being Satan, sweeps a third of the stars from the sky. And there are at least one, if not maybe a few, Old Testament references of sort of that angel and the star. Not that angels are stars or vice versa, but there's kind of used as a reference to kind of describe. So that it could be that St. John is revealing to us that maybe up to a third of the angels revolted against God. We don't know, but we just don't know. This isn't just. We know that it wasn't just Satan. Okay, and there is once again speculation. It's reasonable speculation that Satan, or perhaps this is the name, Lucifer, was the highest. It is thought, there's a scriptural reference that it seems to indicate, not with absolute definitive, but it seems to indicate that Satan came from the highest realm, the seraphim. Okay, like I said, it's speculation, but it's reasonable in that sense. And so, where did they go? Okay, and it says they were cast out of heaven. We're not really talking about the heaven of the beatific vision, kind of the glory of God and everything of that nature. But we're talking about out of the heavens, out of this, once again, sort of outside of this realm of space and time. So we're not, it's a whole nother, okay, we don't really know exactly what, but cast from, and where are they cast to? Now, they are condemned, okay? And hell is not really a place. It's not like it's got an address or something like that, 666, Burning Drive, whatever. It's not an address kind of location. It's a state of existence. Okay, same, and the demons, okay, have been condemned, but it would appear as if they are not in hell. They are not in that, because hell will be for the demons the state of complete inactivity. They can't touch us anymore. So it would, as the book of Revelation says, woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has been cast down to you in great wrath, for he knows that his time is short. This then becomes the battleground, okay? And the demons have been condemned, but they are in the state of being condemned in the sense that, there's sentences, there's no repentance for the fallen angels. There's no need for repentance. They've chosen, and they've chosen exactly how they wanted to choose. As inconceivable as that may be, there's no, they don't want to repent, okay? Now, it's not like they're like, this is great. this is we're really happy, there is maybe the closest we could understand in a human kind of sense, and it's a very, very dark part of our fallen nature. But when we take pleasure in someone else's pain because somehow they deserve that. That's maybe a dim intimation of the nature of the demonic, and I can't really call it happiness because that's what kind of calling dry water or something like that, but a demonic sense of pleasure, I guess you could say. But they're not yet in. So this is there's an activity, whereas like for example, not whereas, but in that when our Lord cast out, the legion, the demoniacs from the Gerasene demoniac, and they beg him not to be sent into they call it the abyss or the pit. It depends on your translation. Basically, there will be a final exorcism that God will perform in a sense, and there would be that final expulsion of the enemy, into the very depths of hell where they can no longer harm us in the slightest way. They're dreading that because at least they can do something, and this is what they hate us because they hate God even more, and we are. We're their targets in that sense, because they can't do anything against God, so they're seeking our destruction because we're created in God's image and likeness. Demons cannot use their angelic powers to the full sense because they are corrupt, and so you can I don't know if you've got something that is rusted, it's not going to be. It still might be strong. You still might be able to beat someone over the head, but you're not going to be able to beat them over the head as well because it's going to maybe break. Stupid analogy, sorry. Sometimes when things just pop off my head, they're really weird. So the corruption of it definitely sort of draws down their power. However, the enemy, oh my goodness. And there's going to be, just like in the angel, if in fact that there are sort of different choirs of angels, different, sort of power, although in the angelic world, you might think, wait a second, you're saying like the cherubim, or the seraphim, the cherubim are up, and the archangels are like way down, they're like the second lowest rung. How is Saint Michael the leader of the army of God? What is that? Because they merited, in a sense, grace. At least, that sense. Now we have to speculate again. Well, what world was kind of happening? And Michael's name means who is like unto God. And people have speculated. It's an interesting speculation that kind of this sort of. I don't say not no name because angels really, but kind of this no name archangel. When Lucifer it has that bravado to say I will be like unto God, and that Michael in a sense, and like I said, it's kind of an imagery, but Michael is, you could imagine being the first to stand up to say who is like unto God, and so he actually merits. Even though in the angelic world, by nature, by their creation, you might say, okay, well, seraphim are higher than this. However, in that moment of testing, they acquired grace, they merited grace. So you can have a little lowly archangel who is now going to be the leader of the hosts of God, the army of God. So, but you have a structure you have a hierarchical structure in the angels, and you have, as I think, I don't know if it was C.S. Lewis or Peter Kreeft or what he said, you have the hierarchy, in heaven, you have the lowerarchy in hell, and so you do have actually exorcists will talk about how more powerful demons will, in a sense, we have to kind of sort of play with this with our mind because there's no physicality to the angels, but will, in a sense, move the lower angels, the subordinate demons, demons to the front to take kind of the brunt of the exorcism, in that sense. Demons are intensely, they're crazy powerful. Let me tell you a story. This is a real story, and this is one of my favorite stories. One of my favorite demon stories. The one to put your kids to bed with at night.
Great.
So real story, true story. So have you ever been in like maybe it's not always in a psych ward, but have you ever been in a psych ward in a hospital typically, or some kind of institution of that sense? You've got rooms where the patients are, and the rooms have a two-way glass, whatever you call that. So if you're in the room, you can't see out sort of into the hall. But if you're in the hall, you can see into the room, so that allows the personnel, the medical personnel, to be able to observe and say, okay, nothing's happening in there, et cetera, et cetera. So this woman is walking down the hall of, a rather, large a wing of a hospital with, mental patients and things, things of that nature. I got all kinds of things hanging out there. So you got some mentally disturbed people in the rooms, and she's walking, down the hall. And this woman, if I remember the story correctly, this woman who's in this room, okay, not looking out necessarily, but looking maybe in another direction, and she's sort of, in this state, she's not really, not doing anything. And the woman who's walking down the hall sees that woman. Kind of something catches her eye, and she thinks to herself, "My, that woman must be possessed." And it turned out that yes, the woman was possessed, and the demon within this woman, let's say within, that's a very kind of broad sense. The demon that has possessed the woman makes the woman turn her head and say out loud to the woman in the hall, of which you can't see when you're in this room, and makes the woman say yes, and by a very powerful demon. Okay, that was child play for the demon. Demons, because they have superior, angels in general, but demons, because they're fallen angels, they have superior intellect and will. So a demon can focus with absolute intensity on whatever he's doing, and where we get distracted, and can make the demon did not, because angels cannot read our thoughts. They can't read our minds. That's God alone. Okay. But angels and demons, okay, they can study at us. It's like the Sherlock Holmes on steroids. They can, and within just milliseconds, observe things, sort of make a trajectory and say, boom, that must be what it is. And angels and demons, okay, cannot predict the future. They can't see into, they can't know our thoughts, but they can probably tell pretty much what we're thinking, because
So you mean that lady that was walking past there, she had a thought to herself?
Yep, just thought to herself.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, didn't say. Oh no.
She didn't say it.
Nope,
she
didn't say anything. Yeah, I don't even know how much of an expression on her face, but yeah. That's kind of one of the enemies we're up against. It's not the worst enemy. We have a worse enemy, one more dangerous than that up against us. But it's the only enemy who's actually plotting our destruction. We're being studied 24/7 by demons. I mean, not to freak anybody out, but that's just the reality. And this is the warfare that we find ourselves in. People don't always like to hear that. Demons know all of us way better than we know ourselves. Usually demons, and if you give me, I have 1.5 minutes, something like that. Demons, we're looking at our lives up here. We're observing some of these things. We're like, man, I gotta stop being so judgmental. I gotta stop being gossipy. I gotta stop doing whatever it is. And but demons are like, whatever. They're working way down here. They're working at levels we don't even know always exists. Okay, And we're seeing the effects up there, but they're working way, way, way deeper. They know us very well. If you've ever had like an inferiority complex, you're like, nobody really appreciates my uniqueness. Oh, the demons do. Because there's not a single temptation that comes our way that isn't tailored to you and you and you and me. Not as in a general sense. They'd never tempt us in the same way because it's totally inefficient. They don't need to do that. They tailor it just. It's those areas of our life that we are most unaware of. That's what they target the most, because we got a lot of Hollywood in our vision of demons, and there's if you look at some of these movies and stuff like that, and they're all over. They got a lot of Hollywood in there. There is some reality to that stuff. I've never seen the movie The Exorcist. It's like a classic of sense. Well, in reality, it was actually a little boy. It was not. It was back in the 50s. It was a Protestant family. This is back when Catholics and Protestants did not talk. He was either an aunt or a great aunt. The little, well, I'll tell you what. Anyway, so as they started playing around with his aunt or great aunt, whatever she was what they refer to as a spiritist. Okay, and so they were playing around with a Ouija board, and they were calling forth, so to speak, dead ancestors, relatives, yada yada. And then eventually, not eventually, but soon, in that perspective, the aunt dies. The boy just goes nuts, It's just the family's like, what in the world is going on here? Eventually, they are so desperate, they take him to a Catholic priest. I believe this is the first time, and this is the first sort of quasi, like the Catholic priest is like, let's see what we got here. And the boy's in one of those, those old mattresses, or the open coil, the open, the boy, and one of the signs of demonic possession is abnormal strength. Okay, the boy grabs one of those coils, pulls it free, slashes the priest from shoulder to wrist, where he has stops the exorcism. I think actually the priest never regained full use of the arm. The cut was so deep. They're getting really desperate. They actually end up bringing the boy. This is a very, very short version of a much longer reality. Bring the boy to St. Louis. Okay, I went to school in St. Louis. Some of the exorcism took place at the university where I was at. My sister, God rest her soul, remembers talking to an old Jesuit priest who at the time was, at the exorcism, was a scholastic, which means like a student, He was one of the young scholastics. They would get him out in the middle of the night because they didn't want anybody to know. They, all this kind of, they would do it at Verhagen Hall, which is like right across the dorm from where a lot of us lived, at least for the first couple of years of our time there. Not the final exorcism did not take place at the university, but they'd have to hold, 4 or 5 these young Jesuit, scholastics having to hold this little boy down. Okay, this boy was possessed by it is horrible because the exorcist. I read the account. I think it was written by the exorcist. It's been years ago, and I don't even know where. Maybe I was in the summer. I can't remember now. But the exorcism actually ended up taking place. It was through the intercession of St. Michael. It was in St. Louis, but it was at a hospital, I think it was. And the university paper once ran a story on it. And the little boy was fine. He grew up. They didn't name the boy or anything. They didn't give his name, but he lived out in, I think it was Washington State. Got married, had a family. It was perfectly fine. Stuff is very real. Okay, exorcisms or possessions are on the rise in many ways, but that's not where the enemy really concentrates. You could be possessed by 1,000 demons. If you're in the state of grace and you die, they lose you. They don't get you. You go to heaven. Okay. You can be.
So you can be in the state of grace.
Yeah, if you're.
And be possessed also.
It has happened before. The thing is, possession is flashy. Possession is not what the enemy usually uses. Does he use it? Absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's totally real, okay? But possession does not guarantee the demons anything, okay? Now, if you are possessed and you have given yourself over to Satan, you're done. I mean, if you die that way, you're done. But if you're not, if we die in an unrepentant mortal sin, we don't have to be possessed in the slightest way. Enemy's got us for all eternity. So let me end with this. The enemy doesn't like the lights. He doesn't like the noise. He doesn't like to be front and center. He likes the shadows. He likes off the radar screen. He likes the corners, the dark spots. Because his main weapon against us is not possession, it's not oppression, it's not obsession, all those different levels of his extraordinary activity. Does it happen? Sure, okay. I've occasionally seen, or at least been partial witness to some things. It doesn't happen that much, and that should not, put it this way, curses are real, things of that nature, absolutely. So we don't want to be foolish about that kind of stuff. So we don't want to be getting out some stupid Ouija board and thinking, well, whatever, that can't happen to me. No, we don't want to be messing around with things. But the major weapon that is used against us, and extremely well, unfortunately, it's temptation. And just the fact that you're like, I'll sleep better tonight. Oh, we shouldn't. Because it's exactly, if someone comes at you with, a sawed-off shotgun, you're like, oh, this is going to be bad. Someone comes at you with a wiffle ball bat, you're like, oh, I don't think that's going to really hurt that much. It's a stupid analogy, but that's part of the effectiveness of his tactics against us, because we're like, oh, it's temptation. I'm tough, I can tempt it. But see, it's where he hits us. He hits us at levels that, and he's not that terribly concerned about this, that. It's a cumulative. He has the long game sort of in mind. He is not looking at, let's see if I can get. Yeah, sure, he's not an idiot. He'll take whatever he can get. I'll give you an example, and then we'll leave with this. And I'll give you an example that I hear frequently in the confessional situation. This isn't revealing anything, but let's say, for example, someone struggles with pornography. Okay, it can be an extremely addictive thing. It can be extremely difficult to break out of, and it can be very, very demoralizing. Okay, but oftentimes it's not that the enemy is like, maybe I can just get him to go from that. It does happen where you go from this to that to that. Now you're going to the whatever the strip club, or you're going to the prostitute, and sure, it does happen. Breaks up marriages, everything. Yeah, sure, absolutely. But he's not really, because for a lot of people who struggle, and we'll just say a lot of guys who struggle, Catholic guys who struggle, they're in the confessional, again and again, it's the cumulative effect. It's the sort of disorientation. It's the discouragement. It's the deepening sort of darkness that, they're starting to think, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to overcome this. And you start slipping, and you start slipping, and you start slipping into despair. And it is, if we think, I know this is a terrible way to end the night. Yay! Thanks, Father. But if we think, Father's a little melodramatic, and it's not going to happen to me. I can't. I'm a good person. It can't happen to me. Trust me, it can. We can lose, and if you haven't been at this point, and hopefully you never will be, but it is utterly amazing, like how easy it is to give up. how easy it is to like I said, I hope you never are at that point. But you know what? For people who have been at that point, they're like, oh yeah, I could be lost. So please, God, you gotta help me every step of the way. One of the worst things we can have is a false sense of self-confidence. Our confidence needs to be in Him, and we need to be aware of how weak we are. And that's the good news, is the fact that, you know what? In the end, he's the rabid, Doberman Pinscher, Rottweiler, or whatever, pit bull on the 30-foot chain. If we, the Chihuahua, yeah. Well, maybe a little bit more aggressive than the Chihuahua, But if we stay 31 feet out, can't do anything to us. That's why, and public enemy number one, so to speak, spiritually speaking, is not the enemy, is not Satan. He is the only one who is actively studying us, strategizing against us, launching, attack against attack against us. He's the only one who's plotting against us. But enemy number one is right here. It's my fallen human nature, because I'm the only one who can let him in. I'm the gatekeeper, as all of us. So it's the person we see in the mirror that we have to say, I don't really trust you. I'm going to trust him. I need to know you better. And that's where self-knowledge is the key aspect. Is holy cow. And, okay, I promise I will end with this. The first characteristic we learn, I think this is a fascinating reality, and it tells us a lot, and it gives us a very important weapon in this arsenal. The first characteristic that we learn about the enemy is, back in Genesis chapter 3, it depends on your translation. I like the word subtle. He was the most subtle of all creatures. He is not going to slide up to us and say, hey, you want to go to hell? It's really great. You like warm weather? Oh, that's great. It's hot. Yeah. Oh, you don't have to worry about that snow and cold and everything. Unless you want to think about cold and like no charity. Yeah, we got lots of no charity down there. So, yeah, but we're not going to talk about that. Everybody's going to like it one day. He doesn't do that. He slides up to us, and we don't even know he's there. We're always, oh, I don't have that, but I'll have to bring a quote. It's a perfect quote. It really describes, and I know this sounds like, it's really depressing. It's not depressing unless we want to give up, which none of you want to give up because you wouldn't be here. But it's a call to arms. It's a call to vigilance, because he's St. Peter, says, be sober and alert, for your opponent, the devil, is prowling about, like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Resist him, solid in your faith, So we have nothing to fear. We just have to make sure that we are rooted in him. As St. Paul says, you do all things in him who strengthens me. We'll end with that. That sounds kind of positive. All right, let me give you a blessing. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, thank you all. Sorry, you're 13 minutes over. Sorry.